afternoons just got real. Real people, real talk, real issues, real solutions. Be sure to check out Ariva Martin in real time on your way home, weekday afternoons from 4 to 6. Turning up the frequency all Black History Month long. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580, and we don't black down.
Yeah, this album is dedicated to all the teachers that told me I never amount to nothing. To all the people that lived above the buildings that I was hustling from that called the police on me when I was just trying to make some money to feed my daughter.
Yeah.
To all my peoples in the struggle, you know what I'm saying? It's all good, baby.
Check it.
It was all a dream. I used to read Word Up magazine. Salt and Pepper and Heavy D up in the limousine. Hanging pictures on my wall. Every Saturday, rap attack, Mr. Magic Molly Mall. I let my tape rock till my tape pop. Smoking weed and bamboo, sipping on private stock. Way back when I had the red and black lumberjack with the hat to match. Remember rapping Duke? The hard. You never thought that hip hop would take it this far. Now I'm in the limelight cause I rhyme tight. Time to get paid, blow up like the world trade. Born sinner, the opposite of a winner. Remember when I used to eat sardines for dinner? Peace to Ron G, Brucey B, Kid Capri. Funk Master Flex, Love Bug, Star Ski. I'm blowing up like you thought I would. Call a crib, same number, same hood. It's all good.
I'm Tavis Smiley. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Our phone number 1-800-920-1580. 1-800-920-1580. The smooth sounds of Biggie Smalls. My top 5 for flow, no question about it. Maybe number 1. Maybe number 1 for flow. But I ain't going to start that fight with our guest in this hour. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580, and I'm delighted to have you in this hour as we talk about what happened last night on the Grammy stage. Last night, the Grammys celebrated 50 years of hip-hop music with a star-studded performance. Over 24 artists last night on stage in tribute to this music form that has become hegemonic the world over. Personally, I had one question last night. Why? I mean, why did all these hip-hop artists show up and show out for the Grammy telecast? Because to my mind, the Grammys have never truly embraced the genre. And more often than not, the Grammys have snubbed. Let's call a spade. I can start with Kendrick and run the list. They have snubbed and they refuse to honor those who have pushed the music and art form into the stratosphere. But that's just me. It's just Tavis. And I am no expert. Fortunately, UCLA professor H. Sami Aleem is an expert. And I will put my why question to him and a great deal more in this hour as we talk about a half-century of hip-hop music. His new book is entitled Freedom Moves, Hip-Hop, Knowledges, Pedagogies, and Futures. And I love that title, Freedom Moves, Hip-Hop, Knowledges, Pedagogies, and Futures. H. Sami Aleem of UCLA joins us now live in studio. Professor Aleem, good to see you, my friend.
Great to see you, Tavis. Wonderful to be here with you.
You been well, man?
I've been really well. And, of course, you lit up the phone lines already with the number one flow conversation.
Yeah, so you want to go there?
Nah,
you want to go there?
The phone lines will start popping off.
Okay, if you want some, I'll give you some.
No debate on Biggie, though.
Okay.
No debate on
Biggie. All right, yeah, I think Biggie's got to be top 5 on everybody's list. That's my assessment.
Yeah,
But we'll leave it there for now. So let me. You don't want any of that, the top 5, but maybe you want some of this, and maybe you don't.
Yeah.
My question a moment ago: why? I'm, again, I love the fact that the Grammys, gave the time they gave last night to all of these artists to celebrate this hip-hop music form, which is undeniable. As I said, hegemonic, as you well know, around the globe. You're the expert here. But I'm feeling some sort of way. I'm not going to lie. As I get older, I'm really feeling some sort of way about people who take advantage of us, who exploit us, who call us when they need us for ratings and beyond. Don't get me started. I'm going to let you. This is your hour, not mine. Take it away.
I mean, this one of the reasons why I love talking to you, Tavis, and listening to your show is because you ask the questions that nobody's asking. So we all had this wonderful celebration last night. Everybody was excited. Folks were reliving the glory days.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Song after song brings back memory after memory of favorite artists, all of the major figures, a lot of the major figures in the game. But I'm willing to bet that you weren't the only one who was ambivalent watching that last night.
Mm-hmm.
So a great moment symbolically for hip-hop culture. 50 years of hip-hop cultural history is nothing to sneeze at. That's a huge deal that hip-hop has been doing this since 1973 and even before that, right? We could argue before that. So that's a huge deal that hip-hop is now dominating the public sphere almost everywhere you turn, right? I'm going to get tacos, I'm hearing hip hop at the stand. I'm going to, get my car fixed, I'm hearing hip hop in the shop. You know the deal. You're at Whole Foods if you shop there, and you're hearing Outkast on the speakers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So this is a symbolic moment. I think this is how people see it, and that joy that they're reliving that moment and kind of being proud. I think taking a moment to think that, like Biggie said in the intro, the ha, you never thought that hip hop would take it this far. And I think there's something to be said for that symbolically. Politically, on the other hand, that's another question, which I think is the deeper question that you're asking, because it's the Grammys have been, let's say, not friends of hip hop, and hip hop actually launched this huge protest, right, against the Grammys. So they were supposed to air the hip hop record or the best rap record, I think in 1989. And then all the artists, Russell Simmons involved too, just protested because they weren't going to air that on television. So hip hop wasn't even being aired, right, when it was taking over, right, the music industry and starting to gain popularity and broad sort of global dominance. Even at that time, they refused to air it. And so now you have a situation where over the years it's been positive and negative, and it's been contentious, one could say, with hip-hop culture. I mean, the biggest snub, I think you alluded to it, was obviously Kendrick Lamar back in 2014, and I think Macklemore and Ryan Lewis, which many of us are still laughing and scratching our heads over. But now it's like they spent the rest of their time in this last decade making it up to Kendrick, so to speak, and finally recognizing sort of the true artistry that's involved in the creation of his music.
Yep. To that end, I don't begrudge these persons showing up last night. I'm not mad at them for showing up. I just wanted to make the point, because I think we need to be transparent about that. That they have rescued not just the Grammy telecast in terms of ratings, but let's be clear about it. Hip hop has rescued a failing music industry.
That's right.
Talk about that.
That's absolutely right. I mean, I'm watching this last night knowing full well why that 15-minute spread of hip hop was in there. They needed the ratings. They needed folks to watch. These award shows are dying. Nobody's into it anymore, right? And so now the very people that you hated on, the very people that you marginalized, that you treated poorly like second-class citizens, are coming through to save the day for you. Again, like you mentioned, only when you are needed. And that's the part of us were watching, a segment of us were watching this last night and thinking, hip-hop's in a very interesting place right now at 50 years. A really interesting place, Tavis. Like when you think of hip-hop occupying these two spaces at the same time, it could be a global social movement for youth around the world, everywhere from Japan to Turkey to Syria to Palestine to Brazil to Cuba to Germany, France, you name it, right? All the kids around the world, generations now, have been picking up hip-hop. South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya, Tanzania, Morocco, you name it, right? Have been picking up hip-hop culture to fight their local revolutions and their struggles, right? To speak themselves into existence, to write themselves into existence, and to right the wrongs that are going on all around them. That's a true fact you could state about hip-hop culture. The other true fact you could say about hip-hop culture is that perhaps, as I think Trisha Rose mentioned years ago, hip-hop has become the cultural arm of capitalism. Those two spaces, right, are fulfilled by hip-hop simultaneously. And so my colleague Robin Kelly, historian, great black historian.
Just on a few weeks ago here.
Robin Kelly, he's an excellent historian and just, speaks for the people. He says hip-hop can both be that social movement and a multi-billion-dollar industry, and that makes it so complex in order to how to understand it, to how to analyze it, how to see its impact around the globe and in the U.S., right, and what it speaks for. Now there are competing demands within hip-hop culture at this 50-year juncture. Where will it go in the next 50 years is the question.
It's complex, and that's why I have him here. That's why he's here, because it is complex, and we're going to unpack it for the next 45 minutes or so. Our guest at this hour is H. Sami Aleem, a UCLA professor, distinguished professor out there on the Westwood campus. The book is called Freedom Moves, Hip-Hop Knowledges, Pedagogies, and Futures. And again, if you saw the Grammy telecast last night, and even if you didn't, you're going to see clips everywhere today for the next few days of these artists last night who turned the stage upside down last night, celebrating a half century of hip-hop. We'll talk more about it and its future when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about. Good thing we've got 3 hours. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
Here at McKay's Family Mortuary, we offer a full line of services with a fine selection of caskets and urns. Also, assistance with cemeteries along with luxury limousine and funeral coaches and other needs pertaining to your family's wishes for your loved one. We accept Veterans Victim Witness Program for mortuary services only at zero cost to you. Cemetery selection does not apply. All insurances are accepted. McKay's Funeral Home understands that saying goodbye is never easy. That's why we've been providing compassionate and professional funeral services to the community for over a decade. Please contact McKay's Family Mortuary, serving Los Angeles, San Bernardino, and Riverside counties and the High Desert. 3918 Marine Avenue, Lawndale, California. 310-978-8877. That's 310-978-8877. By appointment only or log on to mckaysmortuaries.com.
With one of the best savings rates in America, banking with Capital One is the easiest decision in the history of decisions. Even easier than choosing Slash to be in your band.
Next up for lead guitar. You're in.
Cool. Yep, even easier than that. And with no fees or minimums on checking and savings accounts, is it even a decision? That's banking reimagined. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One and a member FDIC.
King C. Gillette is the modern man's answer to the facial hair. With a complete set of precision tools, the King C. Gillette line offers the perfect fit for your facial hairstyle. Want to try something great? Try the Style Master, the quintessential styling tool that every man needs to craft their style. It's a waterproof, cordless trimmer with a long-lasting 4-directional blade. It's extremely versatile and designed to edge, trim, and stubble in 4 directions on any hair length. Master your style with King C. Gillette.
Let's get back to business, Los Angeles County. The Economic Opportunity Grant Program is now open. This program is designed to provide financial support to qualified small businesses, micro entrepreneurs, food industry businesses such as restaurants, and nonprofits in Los Angeles County. Approximately 4,600 grants of up to $2,500 each will be administered to qualified micro businesses that face barriers to accessing capital resources. To learn more about the Economic Opportunity Grant Program, visit www.grants.lacounty.gov. The application process is fast and easy. Don't miss the opportunity to get back to business. This program is administered by the County of Los Angeles through its Department of Economic Opportunity and funded in part through a grant from the California Office of the Small Business Advocate. The application portal is powered by Lindustry. Visit www.grants.lacounty.gov and get back to business.
Let's unpack a little bit more with Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues right now.
Everybody was breaking, the highs was screaming and the bass was shaking and it won't belong till everybody knowing that flash was on the beat. Boss going that flash was on the beat. Boss going that flash was on the beat. Boss going and push me, call up, come to the side. I'm trying not to. Ha 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 ha. It's like a come on, somebody scream!
Yeah, how you cut the message off, I don't know. How you cut the message off, I don't know. But it was a medley last night, so everybody got cut off last night. But as Miles is letting that ride for a second, over 24 artists last night on the Grammy stage. It was an amazing medley of some of the hits that are on the soundtrack of our lives. As hip-hop came into its own. It was a celebration last night on the Grammy stage, in case you just tuned in, of 50 years of hip-hop. Arguably, this was happening before 73, but that's the marker. And so here we are in 2023 celebrating 50 years of hip-hop. Our guest in this hour, as we talk about hip-hop then, now, and into the future, H. Sammy Alim, distinguished professor at UCLA, has a new book out called Freedom Moves, Hip-Hop Knowledges, Pedagogies, and Futures. Before I get back to our conversation with the questions I want to pose to you, your thoughts on the performance last night. You talked about it a few moments ago, but given that we just played some sound of it, what did you make of what they did, in fact, choose to put on stage last night, knowing that a medley means you ain't going to get but a little bit of this and a little bit of that?
Right. So I remember LL's comments before he introduced us saying, now look, We can't have everybody on here. 50 years of artists can't fit in 15 minutes.
Apologies in advance, right?
Apologies in
advance, yeah.
But the performance, of course, for me was one of like this joyful sort of moment where I'm recognizing, look at how far hip-hop culture has come. And I say this because we have to remember that hip-hop came from the very communities that were abandoned and contained and oppressed and marginalized and surveilled and left to die on the vine. These were communities that were completely divested from, that hip-hop comes from black and brown communities. Jeff Chang, my co-editor here of Can't Stop, Won't Stop fame, has detailed this along with Davey D in their history, Can't Stop, Won't Stop, that this is where hip-hop comes from, right? And we know this. It was left there oppressed and marginalized, and no one gave a damn about these communities. So hip-hop comes from that. And the takeover of the stage last night was people saying that, you know, we have now arrived, so to speak. We can question what that arrival and what that inclusion means, and I think that's legitimate, and we should question it. But just listen to the music. I'm hearing the message, Grandmaster Flash and Furious 5, Melly Mel, and I'm reminded that hip-hop has always spoken to those conditions, right? That social consciousness that the message was speaking to. People talk about it as a rap about poverty or a rap about drugs, etc. That wasn't what it was. It was a rap about people dealing with the oppressive conditions that they were given in these circumstances and rising above it. The rap is even a cautionary tale to other youth who are observing this, what not to fall into, what not to do. I mean, there was multiple messages. One message, sort of the social commentary, and another message of how to get out of this situation. And so rap continues to do that even in today. So while watching the live performances, I'm looking across all the artists, and everybody has so many comments, and the social media is lighting up, right? One comment, of course, is were there enough women on stage? What were the gender dynamics like in that performance? Was it too New York heavy? You know, did you consider other regions? And these are all things that Questlove and, you know, I'm sure took into account and thought about ad nauseum. Where was the West Coast, for example? Like, how did we represent those kinds of regions as well as gender, et cetera? So I also was thinking about that from a critical standpoint as well.
Those questions notwithstanding, it seems to me that you can't do much better than being featured at halftime of the Super Bowl.
That's right.
And getting a 15-minute run on the Grammy telecast. Super Bowl, the Grammys. It doesn't get much bigger than that. It underscores the point I made earlier that you and I agree on. You have to agree on it, that hip-hop has become hegemonic. No doubt about that. The question is whether or not it is still transformative, given what you said a moment ago about the origins, the genesis of this music.
That's right.
It's taken over the world. But is it transforming anything these days?
Yeah. I mean, we look at hip-hop in this book, Freedom Moves, Hip-Hop Knowledges, Pedagogies, and Futures. We're looking at hip-hop as the most powerful and potentially transformative arts movement of our times. Okay? Not just historically, but what it continues to do today. So we're talking about hip-hop right now because of the Grammys, ironically, right? But there's other conversations to be had, right? So when we think about how hip-hop is transforming social conditions leading to social change, et cetera, to justice, racial justice movements. We could start right here in the United States, like most folks go globally. But in the book, we detail artists and activists, community organizers working in Pittsburgh, Chicago, New York, the San Francisco Bay Area, East Palo Alto, the Mural Music and Arts Project, Jasiri X's One Hood, Chicago's Kumba Links, right? There are all these organizations all around the country in every single urban center that are hip-hop based, working with hip-hop artists to transform, Tavis, the lives of youth every single day, fighting day in, day out. They will never get a Grammy. They will never be on TV, et cetera. But that's how hip-hop continues to live in the communities from which it sprang up out of to continue to do that transformative work. And that's real. So people will only pay attention to hip-hop when it's on, you know, the TV or on the radio, but all this is a lived culture that is happening all throughout the United States. And for many youth around the country and around the world, this becomes the only thing they have to fight back. Everywhere I go in the United States and all over, we detail in the book from Spain, South Africa, Syria, Palestine. We have artists in dialogue with us about how hip hop continues to transform their conditions on the ground. We're talking about places where you can't even speak, right? Where you speak against the king, such as in Spain, you're in exile. They've been exiling artists for 10 years and imprisoning artists for 10 years for speaking against the king in a so-called democratic country of Spain. So hip-hop becomes an anti-capitalist, anti-fascist tool for them to speak out against their truth. Otherwise, no one else would know about it, right? This obviously happens in Palestine against the occupation, the war in Syria that everyone has forgotten about, but not the hip-hop artists there, etc. So hip-hop continues to speak to those conditions. And one of the communities that I'm most inspired by that we detail in the book is South Africa. We have Prophets of the City, Black Noise, Godessa, so many artists who are fighting on the ground every day and have been for decades, whether the cameras are there or not, to make life bearable for the millions of youth on the ground of color. And you can say that even in Africa because of white-dominated neo-colonial South Africa, right? Fighting these same issues that hip-hop is fighting in the United States, but in their local context for years, right? Now, I always say, don't y'all go thinking you're better than what's happening in the U.S. right now as far as your politics, because as soon as the camera comes the money. As soon as the money comes now you have to question your allegiance to particular politics and communities, and you have the same cycle of the commodification of culture, right? And those, the commodification of culture versus the commitment to the struggle, you could say, right, are always in battle and in struggle.
You're invoking the word commodification takes me exactly where I sort of want to go here right now, and that is to address this question of who owns it, and who controls it. And let me just pivot just for a second here. I remember some years ago being a part of a very public debate when the King children, the children of Dr. King and Coretta Scott King, 4 children then, Yolanda sadly is no longer with us, but there was this great public debate about who really owned King, because the kids, certainly after the death of their mother, were advancing notions of how King's image could be used, and some of us were getting concerned about the ways we saw the King family licensing his likeness, his image, his words. He was a part of an Apple campaign. Dr. King was, you may recall that. He was all over the Apple campaign, the billboards. And so there were questions being raised about, who owns and controls the legacy and the image of Dr. King. And again, speaking of commodification, there is one level at which the family does have some say. IP is real, so intellectual property rights are real, and they were pressing this point of the fact that they owned and controlled King's IP. The pushback against that argument was, you're making an argument about IP, but we're talking about the impact of his words and his work and his witness, and how inspiring that is for people all around the globe. Are you really going to start shutting people down for using King's words and using his image and using his likeness because you control the IP? You remember this conversation?
That's right.
It was a huge public debate, and I was a part of that debate because King is my hero, and I've written a book about Dr. King, and I love King, and so I was a part of that conversation some years ago. I'm using that as a comparative example because you see where I'm going with this.
That's right.
One could have the same debate about hip-hop and whether or not we own and control this brand of music and expression that we created. So on the one hand, I'm getting more and more concerned, not just about who controls it here domestically, the record companies, who owns the IP, who owns the masters. That's one way to have this conversation. But the other way to have it is what you just teed up a moment ago, that all around the world, people are using this creation to express their own hopes and dreams and aspirations, as your subtitle suggests, and futures. And you don't want to stop that. Am I making sense here? So I'm just trying to figure out where we are in this debate now about who owns and controls what we created.
Look, there are multiple ways to answer that. I'm going to take you back to Chuck D of Public Enemy.
Sure.
The UCLA Hip Hop Initiative, we hosted Chuck D last spring for a course on rap, race, and reality with Public Enemy's Chuck D. And we had Chuck D every single Wednesday night for 3 hours, 10 weeks straight. And we're learning at the feet of one of the legends and the masters of the game, and also one of the theorists of hip hop and of society, right? So he's very critical and insightful in so many ways, as we know, with Public Enemy. He talked a lot about what happens when culture gets commodified. And in that word commodified is modified, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And I would go past modified and go to distorted. Right? And so you have the commodification, turning something into a commodity, but also modifying it for your own purposes. So when hip hop emerges as a way for people to survive, to heal, to grow, right? To deal with the most brutal of contexts and circumstances, to push past that and to succeed, right? And to push past that and to overcome. That's how hip hop emerges, right? And now you have a situation where corporations get involved, and we have that whole discourse of commodification, and we know what happens when it's left in the hands of a few white suits. We know what happens to the culture. So I would quote here Mos Def, who says all the time, people want to ask what's happening with hip-hop culture. What's happening with hip-hop, man? I don't know what's happening with what's going on with hip-hop right now. What are they talking about, right? And he says hip-hop is not some giant living up on the mountainside that's ready to come down and attack the townspeople. It's you, it's me, it's all of us. We are hip hop. And I think that's the answer to who owns hip hop culture. When you think about, we're at a certain stage, to go back to Chuck D, who was saying you could either be a caretaker of the culture or an undertaker of the culture.
Hold that thought. We'll come to that in a moment. This notion of being a caretaker of the culture or an undertaker of the culture. Nobody says it like Chuck D. I
That's right.
love him.
We
deeply.
all have that choice.
Yeah, it's a powerful frame. I want to interrogate that frame and what Chuck D had to say about it when we come forward. Our guest is H. Sami Alim, the distinguished UCLA professor, author of the new book Freedom Moves: Hip Hop Knowledges, Pedagogies, and Futures. You're listening to him right now on KBLA Talk 1580.
The station you turn to when you've had it up to gear with cultural incompetence. KBLA Talk 1580.
Good morning, I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Democrats are making changes to the 2024 presidential primary calendar. DNC Chairman, African-American Jamie Harrison says the changes show the diversity of America.
We start with South Carolina. We then move 3 days later to two other small states, New Hampshire, which has traditionally been the second contest. And then we also add Nevada, which elevates Latino voters.
During a party gathering in Philadelphia on Saturday, DNC delegates approved Georgia and Michigan joining the primary window for the first time. Iowa has traditionally been the starting line for the presidential election, but it's now being displaced. However, the new calendar is facing opposition from impacted states and could remain unsettled for months. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network, and BINnews.com.
Troubles in the Cahuenga Pass now on the south side of the 101 at Lancashire. We have a crash being reported here. That is delaying you coming away from the Hollywood split, the 134-170. The 101 north at Highland had a stalled vehicle from earlier. That is gone, but we're busy from Western. Seeing a slow drive into the Sepulveda Pass, 405 south. This is going to be right as you get towards the 101 interchange. We've got a collision here onto the right shoulder. That has slowed you from at least Victory, and that tough commute continues up and over the hill beyond Getty. City of Industry, the 605 north at Valley Boulevard. Carpool lane and the left lane taken up with a collision. We're busy here from Whittier Boulevard.
It's the tire sale of all tire sales. Buy two, get two free. Now at your local Big O Tires. That's two free tires when you buy two. Valid on select tires with purchase of an alignment and tire protection package. Buy two tires, get two free. Now through February 19th. For your nearest store, go to bigotires.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The rumors were true. The Lakers and Clippers were involved in trade talks with the Brooklyn Nets for Kyrie Irving, but the Nets were more impressed with the offer from the Dallas Mavericks. The Mavs offered two veteran starters, guard Dorian Finney-Smith and forward Spencer Dinwiddie, as well as a future first-round pick and two future second-round picks. The Lakers offered Russell Westbrook first-round picks in 2027 and 2029, and reserve players Austin Reeves and Max Christie. The Clippers offered reserves Luke Kennard and Terrence Mann, and three future first-round picks. The Lakers and Clippers were unwilling to give up any starters for Irving, an eight-time All-Star, but a player who brings a lot of baggage. The NBA trade deadline is Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. Stay with us for more news, opinions, and conversation on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
This is Aaron at Original Taco Peach. Let us cater your Super Bowl party and future event. Call 323-348-4441 and visit us at 3272 West Slauson off Crenshaw.
Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, Maisha Cairo here, KBLA, live at Chase Bank on Crenshaw and Vernon for the In This Together tour with female business owners, a day of empowerment, community panels, and best of all, tips on building business from marketing to capital. Today I spoke with Tatiana, a community manager for JP Morgan Chase.
Thank you so much. Yes, my name is Tatiana Roberts. I am a community manager for JP Morgan Chase. I have to honestly say that this has been the most fulfilling position that I've ever had, where I get to give back to the community because I saw my mom's struggles. That's really what fuels what I do to make sure that the community has all the access to the resources that my mother didn't have.
So for the mother who's in business, what are 3 quick tips you can give to ensure that they're on the right path to accessing financial support from a bank like Chase?
Say number 1, just make sure that you're checking your credit on a consistent basis and taking action to either fix your credit, maintain your credit, or rebuild your credit. The second thing would be budget. I know that B word is kind of like ugly right? A lot of people don't like that B word, but it has to be done. We need to tell our money where to go. The last thing is to build a network of supporters that are going to lift you up.
The community building here in Crenshaw is that network. So visit the Chase Community Center on Crenshaw and Vernon. Meet a banker today. Tell them about your business. I'm Maisha Cairo in the community for KBLA with JP Morgan Chase.
Get ready for an intimate evening with Life Jennings. Valentine's Night, February 14th at the Redondo Beach Performing Arts Center. Doors open at 7 p.m., showtime 8. Advance tickets start at $65. Life Jennings and special guests. Valentine's Night at the Redondo Beach Performing Arts Center. For tickets, call 800-595-4849. For more info, call 323-849-9577 or visit jimsbenefitconcert.org.
Thinking about hosting a podcast and don't know where to start? Morris Media Studios has you covered. We're a professional podcast and voiceover studio located in Leimert Park. We specialize in recording and live streaming audio and video podcasts. Let us help you set up, record, and distribute your podcast. Hosting a podcast is a great way to bring awareness to your business, product, or good cause. For more info, visit morrismediastudios.com or give us a call at 323-815-4204.
Less BS per broadcast. Fewer microaggressions per megawatt. KBLA Talk 1580.
Your hands, everybody, if you got what it takes. Cause I'm KRS and I'm on the mic and premieres on the breaks.
I'm Tavis Smiley. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Our phone number 1-800-920-1580, 1-800-920-1580. The voice of KRS-One is unmistakable, and love that brother. Chris is a great guy. My mind, I hear this track, my mind goes to Paris. I was in Paris one summer, and literally bumped into him on the street. He didn't know I was there. I didn't know he was there, but he was there for a few weeks. And we just hung out in Paris. And one of the great summers of my life, hanging out with KRS-One in Paris that particular summer. Our guest in this hour is H. Sammy Aleem, distinguished professor at UCLA. His new book out is called Freedom Moves, Hip-Hop Knowledges, Pedagogies, and Futures. We are talking about hip-hop in this hour because everybody's talking about hip-hop today, given the huge performance last night on the Grammys, celebrating 50 years of the music genre. Over 24 artists on stage last night, so no better time to be talking about hip-hop than today and in this hour with all the rest of the country. And before news, traffic, and sports, Professor Aleem said something powerful, as he often does, quoting, in this case, Chuck D., that when it comes to hip-hop 50 years later, either you're a caretaker or you are an undertaker. You're either a caretaker or an undertaker only. Chuck D could put it like that, and that's why I love that brother's mind and his heart, more importantly. But I was saying to Professor Aleem during the break that yesterday I finally got around to answering some questions. I've been asked by a publication to offer my thoughts on what makes a great talk show host, what makes one a great conversationalist, and they sent me a series of questions. And I was behind this week, and getting through that first week of Black History Month and all the things the station is launching this month. So I finally got around yesterday afternoon to answering those questions. And in answer to one of the questions, I said that it seems to me that there are a number of things that one has to do to be a great talk show host, starting with being a generous listener. I teach this to my team here all the time at the station. You got to be a generous listener, a charitable listener. The more charitably you listen, the better you are in this game. But in answer to one question, I said there are three things that one has to have. One has to be empathetic. One has to be curious, and one has to understand their purpose for being in this. I think you see where I'm going with this. You got to be empathetic. If you're not empathetic as a talk show host, then you can't put yourself in the shoes of the person you're talking to. And if you're not empathetic to understand their journey and open to what they have to say, then you're not curating a conversation where the listeners can situate their humanity in the conversation. So you got to be empathetic, number one. Number two, you got to be curious. If you're not a curious person, you're definitely in the wrong lane. If it's about hearing yourself talk and not about listening to what they have to say, then you're in the wrong lane. You got to be a curious person. I am genuinely a curious person. But thirdly, you got to understand your purpose for doing this. And here's where I'm coming back to you in this notion of caretaker versus undertaker. There are too many folk these days in radio and television who are getting into my lane. Can I keep it real? Can I take it to the bridge? Can I hit it and quit it? Too many folk getting into my lane because they want to advance their brand. It's just another project to advance their brand. More invitations, more concert dates, more likes, more deals. It's all about deal making, but you're in this lane. I'm not going to call no names, but I can tell you when these people show up, they're not going to survive. They're not empathetic enough. They're not curious enough. They're not charitable listeners. And they don't really care about it. They care about using this platform as an opportunity to advance their brand. They're in it for the wrong reasons. Let me circle back now to this notion of caretaker versus undertaker. It seems to me when it comes to my business, if you're not a caretaker, then that makes you an undertaker. You're going to kill off the lane. You're going to kill off this platform that we have to elevate people if it gets crowded with too many people who are only in it for the wrong reasons. So you become an undertaker by on demand because you are not a caretaker. You see where I'm going with this, right? I feel the same way about hip-hop, and I'll let you unpack that part of it. If you're not a caretaker of the craft, if you're not a caretaker of the music, if you're not a caretaker of the style, then whether you choose to or not, you end up being an undertaker. That's my take, but tell me yours.
That's right. So this is a conversation with Chuck D when he was our inaugural artist in residence at the UCLA Hip Hop Initiative. He made sure over and over again that we knew our choice to either be a caretaker of the culture or an undertaker of the culture. And if you say you love hip hop culture as an academic, for example, what are you going to do that actually shows and demonstrates that love for hip hop culture? And one of the things that I think is really important, Tavis, is when you have that purpose, it's not about you, right? You're creating a conversation that can benefit every single person in the room.
That's right.
Everybody that comes into contact with the words, just like a great artist, right, will have thoughts, feelings, emotions, right, be moved to action. That's the hope. So in the book, Freedom Moves, we've curated this hip-hop conversation. So in the book, you'll find conversations with Chuck D, Rakim, the GZA's Wu-Tang Clan's the GZA, Talib Kweli, Jasiri X, right? All of these artists, Omar Effendum, Emil YX, Shaheen Arifdeen, all these artists from all around the world in conversation with activists, with scholars. So not only is Jeff Chang and Casey Wong co-editing this with me, but we have Mark Lamont Hill, Mark Anthony Neal, Joan Morgan, Brittany Cooper, Treva Lindsay, Gloria Latson-Billings, Regina Bradley, Bettina Love, all of the top hip-hop scholars, activists, and artists in this conversation together. This is how we caretake and not undertake. It's a community of people that come together for the love of hip-hop culture to celebrate 50 years of hip-hop cultural history, looking backward, and to think critically about what the next 50 years of hip-hop cultural history is going to look like. Hip-hop has been plagued, so to speak, with all of these problems that it's been scapegoated for, right? We know it's been a scapegoat for all these problems. But in the book, some of the conversations we have, because we caretake for the culture, because we love the culture, it's a transformative love that we get from Black feminist theory. We have Black feminist, queer, disabled perspectives on hip-hop culture in that last section of the book. We start globally. We turn to all the communities in the United States. We turn to the hip-hop pedagogies, and then we push hip-hop beyond its limits from within. So you have women in hip-hop culture, Black disabled people in hip-hop culture, queer folks within hip-hop culture who love the culture and who are pushing back from within out of love for the culture to help the culture grow and evolve. That's also caretaking.
Yeah. What you're suggesting to me now is that hip-hop, by any other definition, is an open source art form. It's an open source art form. I can read
That's
that.
right.
I can read that a number of ways. I see the good and the bad of that. Talk to me about that.
That's right. So actually, Davey D often refers to hip-hop as an open source culture, and Chuck D as well has mentioned this. It's one of the powers of hip-hop, right? That means it is sort of limitless in its expansion and growth, right? Everyone who picks up the mic, who dances in the street, who DJs, right, who does the graffiti, who's involved in a hip-hop lifestyle and way of being, contributes to that culture and has sort of the power to sort of evolve, change. So we've seen this especially globally. We've also seen it move around the country, right? As it goes to the dirty South, West Coast, it starts picking up its own flavor. It starts getting rooted in different forms of African-American music, right, of the region. It does that globally. So in Ghana, they have hip life. You know what I mean? In South Africa, they have all these versions of hip-hop culture on the ground, right, and elsewhere. So they start picking up hip-hop culture and infusing it with their local politics, their local music, and having it speak to the youth on the ground who most need it, right? Because they're abandoned by the state, they're abandoned by government, they're abandoned by politicians, they're abandoned by educational systems. This is exactly the story of hip-hop that happened in the United States. I want to remind folks that hip-hop is on the Grammys, but you have hip-hop that is coming from communities, Black communities in the United States, where you took jobs away. You took opportunities away. You took education away. You bombed Black Wall Street. You denied every single opportunity, and you took it away. But you couldn't take away language and culture. You can't take away language, culture, and music. And people say, well, they took away African languages because they disbanded and divided and separated. But guess what? Black people in the United States, enslaved Africans, gave life to a whole new language that scholars now call African American language, etc., transformed music, transformed culture, made it all their own. So the Africanisms, the African impulse continues to survive through hip-hop culture, right? And that's also open source, right? So from the very beginning, hip-hop was drawing from all of these different African, Caribbean roots of the culture and music to create something new. So that's actually always been hip-hop, and it continues to be hip-hop today.
It is hip-hop today, and we want to talk when we come forward about hip-hop tomorrow.
Yes.
Where this genre is going 50 years later. Again, a great celebration last night on the Grammy stage, but there are all kinds of complex questions about the future of this music genre. We'll put those questions to our guest, H. Samuel Lean. When we come forward, you're listening to KBLA Talk 1580.
Be sure to like and follow Tavis Smiley at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues when we come forward.
Will Smith and Martin Lawrence confirm Bad Boys 4 is in the works. Maisha Cairo here with your K-Black Minute News, brought to you by Lindustry. The film Bad Boys 4, Bad Boys for Life, is in pre-production. Take a listen to the viral announcement by Will Smith and Martin Lawrence themselves.
It's about that time.
It's about that time.
It's
y'all.
official, y'all.
Y'all know what it is, right?
It's official. Bad Boys for Life, baby.
I'm Maisha Cairo, and that's your K-Black Minute News.
Thanks to our new sponsor, Lindustry. Lindustry is a national Black-led small business lender that is headquartered in Los Angeles. Lindustry helps small business owners access the affordable capital needed to grow. Visit Lindustry, LENDISTRY.com/KBLA today.
Fred Hines was an African-American blacksmith when he started at LADWP in 1968. After a long 30-year career of public service, he enjoyed the fruits of his labor in retirement. Today, Utility Executive Secretary LaTanya Bogan serves as the Retirement Board President, overseeing the retirement funds for more than 20,000 LADWP employees and retirees. She promotes the financial security of LADWP employees and their families. As LADWP LADWP celebrates Black History Month, they proudly highlight the excellent work and exemplary leadership of Black employees who work hard to serve you. Visit them online at joinladwp.com.
The first time I tried to quit vaping, I told myself that it was like a mountain that I had to climb over. And once I got to the other side, it would be clear. But I couldn't make it over. What really got me to quit was my little sister. I saw her vaping. So I was back in the mountain, but this time, she was up there with me. It's weird what you can do for others that you won't do for yourself.
Every attempt is part of your story to quit for good. Visit Kick It California today at kickitca.org.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where hate loses and love wins.
The book is called Freedom Moves, Hip-Hop Knowledges, Pedagogies, and Futures. Our guest in this hour is one of the editors of this book, along with Jeff Chang and Casey Phillip Wong. Our guest in this hour is H. Samuel Lee of UCLA. He was saying to me during the break that it took 10 years to write this book, and I started laughing to myself because when it takes 10 years to write a book about hip-hop, the genre is changing so fast inside that decade. Every time you get ready to send it to the publisher, you want to probably adjust something, right?
That's right. It's a living, breathing book.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a living, breathing book that has changed from day one all the way through the 10 years. I mean, we went through a pandemic with this book.
Yeah.
We went through all the racial justice uprisings, the anti-police killings, all of that. We went through all of that. And each time hip-hop engaged the world differently, right, and helped us also engage the world differently.
Yeah. Speaking of engaging the world differently, that is the challenge to this genre, it seems to me, in the coming months and years. And what's your assessment of where this art form is headed?
Look, that's a huge question. Yeah. I've been writing about hip-hop culture for 25 years. First book was Street Conscious Rap in 1999. Mm-hmm. Okay, then we went all the way on to the Global Cipher in 2006. And several books later, here we are, Freedom Moves, right? 25 years later in 2023, talking about 50 years. Yeah. So we never thought we would even be talking about it at this point in time. But hip-hop now, like I said, it's at a really interesting crossroads. Everyone involved in hip-hop culture, as you start to look around the room, you're not the only one in your 40s, in your 50s. On stage last night were artists in their 60s. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we have definitely evolved, right, and grown, right, to a particular stage. So how will we continue to evolve? And I think one of the things in this book that makes this book, for me, important in Freedom Moves is we talk about what the future might look like. We're not going to be like the all-seeing eye, or we're not in any way that egomaniacal, right?
You can't be.
Yeah, you can't predict the culture.
That's the open source.
That's right. It's the open source piece. Right now, so when we write about the sort of Black, feminist, queer, disabled perspectives, that's sort of a leading, sort of cutting edge of hip-hop culture that people watching the Grammys might not be aware is even out there. But when you talk about the Crip-hop movement, Crip, like reclaiming the word cripple, from as an insult, right? Like hip-hop always does, reclaims and flips into a positive. When you talk about that with Leroy Moore and Stephanie Keeney Parks in this book, you're forcing the conversation, right? Because now you're dealing with a white, racist, disability justice movement on one hand, and also Black ableism on the other. So how do Black disabled folks find their way through hip-hop culture when they're navigating this, right? And that struggle may seem like it's unrelated to you, but it is related, right? Everybody's navigating these sort of tensions and struggles within communities, and the most oppressed and the most marginalized find ways out, and that informs everybody, right? That betters the culture, it informs the culture, it helps the culture evolve and continue to grow. I think we saw some really fascinating things with hip-hop last night that nobody's talking about really as hip-hop. One of the artists, Bad Bunny. Okay, anyone who listens to Bad Bunny knows it's rap over Afro-Caribbean beats. It's Latin trap, reggaeton, all in one. It's genre bending, right? But it's rap music, right? It's rap over beats, right? And so Bad Bunny was part of the hip-hop sweep of the Grammys, right? Because he's also winning awards for rap, which is part of hip-hop culture. And he's taken it to that next level, all in Spanish. Hip-hop is now multilingual, right? It's multi-ethnic. It's pushing all kinds of boundaries. And I want to take Bad Bunny for a second, if I could just say something about him, because some listeners are probably hearing the words Bad Bunny and rolling their eyes, and I could hear the teeth being sucked already. You know what I'm saying? Because he talks about tengo mucha novia, all his girlfriends and all this stuff, right? Typical stuff that you might hear. But he's also talking about gentrification, the neo-colonialism of Puerto Rico, right? El Apagón, which he started off with last night. Yeah. That's what that song is about, right? It's about the blackouts in Puerto Rico and how to recover that. And he's pushing gender boundaries, sexual identity. He's doing all these things to kind of break down machismo, right? Doing all of these things that people don't necessarily know that he's doing. That's a metaphor for hip-hop culture.
Yeah, I don't think hip-hop should ever succumb to the pressure that everything uttered has to be socially redemptive. I mean, you still want to have fun.
That's right.
But I think those two things are not mutually exclusive. I digress on that point. Our remaining moments with H. Sammy Halim when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We may be LA's newest talk station, but when you're punching above your weight, it's not about whether you can throw a punch. Can you take a punch? We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. And we don't black down. Talk 1580 would like to thank all of the businesses that tune into KBLA at work. We celebrate you, your calls to the station, and your overall support. To show our appreciation, we would like to treat your office to lunch for 10, sponsored by John O'Groats family-owned restaurant and johnogroats.us. Open the KBLA Talk 1580 app or log on to KBLA1580.com to submit your office to be selected for our Office of the Week. We know you're just like our staff, putting in many hard, smart working hours per week. We just want to say thank you, and we appreciate you. You and your staff deserve lunch on us. Enter your office to win lunch for 10 and be highlighted on KBLA Talk 1580 as our Office of the Week. Open the KBLA app or log on to KBLA1580.com to enter your office today to become the KBLA Talk 1580 Office of the Week. Sponsored by John O'Groats family-owned restaurant and johnogroats.us. Become the KBLA Talk 1580 Office of the Week. This has been a KBLA Talk 1580 community call to action.
Hey, Dad, how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Is this tree good for climbing? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
The possibility of lung cancer can be pretty scary, especially if you're one of approximately 8 million current or former smokers at high risk. That's why SaveByTheScan.org wants you to know that now there's a breakthrough low-dose CT scan that can detect lung cancer early, and it only takes 60 seconds. You stop smoking, now start screening. For an easy quiz to see if you're eligible, visit SaveByTheScan.org. It could save your life. SaveByTheScan.org is brought to you by the American Lung Association's Lung Force Initiative and the Ad Council.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles is a nonprofit law firm that protects and advances the rights of the most underserved, leveling the playing field and ensuring that everyone can have access to the justice system. Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles seeks to achieve justice for people living in poverty across Greater Los Angeles. The foundation provides direct representation, offers counsel and advice, provides referrals, educates the community about their legal rights through workshops and seminars, and supports individuals and families by protecting human and civil rights. To get legal help, to donate, or to volunteer, please visit lafla.org. That's lafla.org. At KBLA Talk 1580, we stand with young people. We don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Conversations that matter. You're listening to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
I only got 3 quick minutes here. Professor Halim, I'm getting all kind of messages. People will concur with your assessment that last night West Coast rap was kind of left out. Q wasn't there. Snoop wasn't there. My only retort is, first of all, it's the Grammys. They don't always get stuff right to begin with all due respect to Questlove. But the West Coast did get all that love at halftime of the Super Bowl
That's
last
right.
year. So
They
maybe they said we're going to give the East Coast some love this time around. I don't know. You tell me.
I agree with the listeners on the West Coast being kind of left out,
Yeah.
but I also want to point out that the West Coast, represented hard with Kendrick Lamar.
They did. True.
Taking home those awards. I'm not huge on awards, but I want to say what Kendrick did, if I could,
please,
was in that album, this is the artist. This is creativity. People who care about their craft, who take their craft seriously, who apprentice for years, who make their first album when they're 12, 13, 14 and live it for decades, right? Who live the culture for the people. That's their purpose. Who are creating this art. Hip-hop doesn't have to be boxed in, like you said. Kendrick showed everybody you could be politically black, joyfully black, introspectively black, and create beautiful, wonderful, thought-provoking art that invokes these kinds of conversations that we're having today, these kind of conversations about art, about culture, society, politics, and be introspective. His whole album, right, is thinking about his life, himself, his issues, his struggles internally. So we know he can hit the politics. We know he's down for the people, but he has that freedom of expression. He's also making, in one way, freedom moves, right, for artists to open up these conversations that we can be full human beings, the 360 degrees of ourselves through this hip-hop music.
Kendrick, if you're listening, you might want to get to Professor Aleem to do your liner notes next time, because that was a lovely endorsement, so beautifully laid out. And again, I don't know anybody who disagrees with you about the impact that Kendrick has already had and will have, and there are many in this building who believe he's already the GOAT.
That's right.
But we won't have that debate. We'll end where we started, not having the debate. Yeah, exactly. Avoiding the debate
next time
about the GOAT or the top five. The book is called Freedom Moves, Hip-Hop Knowledges, Pedagogies, and Futures. The editors are H. Sammy Aleem. Our guest in this hour, Jeff Chang and Casey Phillip Wong. Those brothers have been guests on this program as well. Congratulations on the book, and thank you once again for giving us, we love giving exclusives around here, the first interview about the book on KBLA Talk 1580. Professor Aleem, good to have you here.
Thank you, Tavis. Wouldn't go anywhere else.
The Motivator, Les Brown, after news, sports, and traffic on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Doug Davis, and here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Activists in Memphis, Tennessee continued holding demonstrations over the weekend, days after Tyree Nichols' funeral. Local organizations described it as a day of action and demanded more transparency and accountability from law enforcement agencies. New York City will make COVID vaccines optional for current and prospective city workers starting this week. Black Mayor Eric Adams says the city will no longer require the vaccine for over 96% of city workers. It takes effect this Friday. The Grammy stage lit up last night as the award show celebrated 50 years of hip-hop. Artists from all decades performed on stage, including Queen Latifah, Ice-T, and Lil Baby. The Brooklyn Nets are reportedly trading Kyrie Irving to the Dallas Mavericks. The All-Star guard requested the trade after talks on a possible contract extension broke down. Neither the Nets or the Mavericks have confirmed the trade as of yet. And that's the latest. I'm Doug Davis from the Black Information Network and BIN News.